Hi, I'm Aaron Marcus, and I am really excited about offering this webinar for you today. This is all about how to shoot incredible auditions from home that casting directors are going to love. So let's get started. Okay, so let me run through a couple of quick slides for you at first. Here's contact information for me, and I'm just going to zip through this. One of the bonuses that you get uh, by having ordered this video is that you will get a PDF of the entire the slideshow. So this way, you'll be able to go back, see things, and certainly get in touch with me through all my contact information. Here are the topics we're going to be talking about. Once again, I don't want to go through them right now. I'd rather just get started. Okay, so what do you want to do before reading the sides? So the very first thing is you need to find out, and once again, this is either from you, if you book the audition directly or through a representative, you need to find out when is the deadline for submitting the audition. And you want to take that very seriously. If you are given the luxury of having 2 or 3 days, that's great. Honestly, I would still do it as soon as possible because sometimes they'll make decisions. If they've seen somebody who they really like, they'll just make the decision then and there. So if you can, try to submit your read as soon as possible. Also, make sure you're available for the shoot date. If you're not, let the people know, whether it's casting, and ask them if you should still be auditioning. Sometimes the dates are kind of fluid, and they'll give you a date that they're shooting, but it might be up in the air. So always just clarify that. Find out if they need a slate. And I'm just going to do a very short definition here of a slate. You might already know. And I'm going to be talking about slating later on in the video. But essentially, what a slate is, it's a way of identifying yourself. And sometimes it might just be your name. It could be your name and the character. It could be the name, character, your age. It could be name, character, age, at least more so if you are a minor. For adults, they not supposed to ask your age. Maybe what city you live in. I mean, there are all kinds of things that they might ask in a slate. Maybe if you have an agent, who your representative is. So always make sure that you know. And sometimes you do have to ask. Surprisingly enough, they don't spell it out all the time. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So find out what they need in the slate. If you're going to be uploading this, find out how they want you to label your the actual audition itself. Sometimes it might be first name underscore, last name underscore, the character. It could be a whole lot of different things. For all of this, just make sure you follow it exactly, because I have been told that there are some casting directors that will simply delete them if it's not done properly. Honestly, sometimes it feels like the setup part is more difficult than the audition itself. So anyhow, follow it carefully. If you are asked to sign an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement, take it very seriously. It is a legal document, and essentially what that is saying is, you can't talk about it, you can't share information about it. Certainly never post this information on any social media. Don't even say that you're auditioning for a product or a project. Sometimes they don't even want people to know that they are getting ready to shoot something. So anyhow, those are things you want to do beforehand. Okay, and I just went back one slide. Let me move forward. Okay, so for studying your slides, there are, and this is going to be an abridged version. I do have videos that you can watch that just deal with studying the slides, or studying for your audition. But essentially, here's what you need to do: read through everything, read everybody's part, make sure that you are very familiar with all the words. If there's anything you don't understand, any words you're not sure about, if you're not sure how to pronounce some words, make sure you find out ahead of time. Don't act it out as you're reading it. Just read it straight through. Read it a bunch of times. One of the things that I really like to do is ask the 5 W's, ask and answer them. Who, what, where, when, why? Who are you talking to? What are you talking about? And by the way, for the who, make it very specific. Make sure you know very specifically who this person is. What are you talking about? Where is this taking place? The reason why that's important is because you want to make sure that this audition actually gives the feel of you being on the set. So if it's taking place in a bedroom and you're lying next to somebody having this conversation, chances are you're going to be talking to them very differently than if you're walking down, 7th Avenue in New York, right by Penn Station, where it's going to be loud, noisy, lots of crowds. So you want it to have the feel of wherever you are. When is this happening? Is this happening at 7 o'clock in the morning? Is this happening at 3 o'clock in the morning? Is this happening at 12 o'clock in the afternoon? Your vocalization is going to be very different depending on when. And then why? What's the reason for you saying all of this? So answer those 5 W's very specifically. And the other thing with the who, if it's a character that you don't know who this person is, what your relationship is with the character, see if you can find out. See if you can ask. If it's a TV show and this person is not a regular on the show, they've never been in another episode, and you don't know what your relationship is, that's an essential question to ask. I mean, are you, this person's husband? Are you an ex-spouse? Are you somebody who just started dating and you guys are in love with each other? Is this somebody you don't like? Is this somebody you're jealous of? Is this your best friend's, wife or boyfriend? Whoever it is, it's really essential that you find out what is your relationship with the other person. Okay, so also know who the scene is about. If it's not about you, don't try to make it about you. If it's, one of the stars of the show and you have, you're asking a couple of questions and you're really setting up the scene to give more information to the audience about the main character, don't try to make it about you, because you will never get the part that way. And like I mentioned before, know your relationship with the other character. One of the things that I like to do, and this is all dealing with memorization, everybody has different ways of doing this. And I also have a video that's just about memorization. One of the things I like to do is write out all of my lines. Sometimes I'll write out the other person's lines too. But if I don't have that much time, sometimes I'll just write out my lines. I just find that there's something about writing the lines. It helps make it stick in my brain. There are many different methods that you can use. And actually, I want to show you a couple of really interesting websites right this second that I think you're going to find really helpful. And let me just grab this one for you. And this is really interesting. It's memorizer.me. And what you can do with this website is you type in your lines and you'll read about it. And they show you different ways of going about memorizing it. And then you go to the next step. And what's really cool is they will take the first letter of every word and put it in the sentence, and you stare at it. And this is after you've gone through the first step, and see if you can get every word in the sides. Because sometimes when we start memorizing things, we skip a word. So by having the first letter of every word in there, you know that you're not missing anything. Really cool website to use. Here's something else that you can use. If you are doing something, let's say it's a training film and you've got a ton of dialogue going on, you're the on-camera narrator. This is it's a free program. It's an online teleprompter, and you can actually set this up. near your camera. And you know what? Just on a little bit of a side note, even if it's not for an audition, it's just a great tool if you want to practice using a teleprompter. And let me show you a third thing that you can use. This one does have a fee connected to it. It's called Rehearsal Pro, and you can say your lines in there, you say the other person's lines, and it's a really good way to help memorize things. I personally don't use it, but I've heard good things about it. Anyhow, just want to share it with you. You can check out all three of those places and see if it's right for you. Okay, so those are three really helpful things for you. So what's your primary goal here? So you want to make sure with your home audition that you create this video that has no shadows on your face. You don't want any shadows in the background. You don't want anything distracting people from looking at your read. Your face should be nice and clear. Your eyes should be very visible, really sharp. And I'll show you in a little while how to set up the equipment properly. You also want to make sure there's nothing on the wall behind you that's going to be distracting. I think it's really helpful to either have a screen, maybe have a white sheet behind you that's not wrinkled. Make sure that you don't have pictures behind you. You don't have wallpaper, just anything that's going to take people's attention off of you. Now, if you're auditioning for film or television, you never look into the lens of the camera. The only exception to that rule is if you are auditioning for, let's say, a news anchor or a reporter, and you're doing a stand-up, and then, yeah, you are going to look directly into the lens of the camera. But typically, what's going to happen is you're going to look to your right or camera left. And so it's going to be more like this. And that's where you can have your reader sitting or standing, however you're setting this up. So anyhow, make sure you don't look into the lens of the camera. Now for the slate, yes, then you do look into the lens of the camera. But while you're actually auditioning, a little bit to camera left, you're right. You also want to make sure that your sound is very clear, that people can understand you easily, and that holds true for the reader as well. Now, it's a little bit tricky. You don't want your reader to overpower you. You don't want your reader too low where they can't hear you, and you always need to have a reader. One time I tried this, it wasn't received very well. I thought it was a pretty ingenious idea, so I stopped doing it. Essentially, what I did was I recorded the other person's lines in my phone, and no, actually, I used a tape recorder. I forgot. I used an actual tape recorder, and then I had it timed out. So I would say my lines, and the tape is running, and then the other person's lines would come in, and then my line. And actually, I was pretty impressed how I got the timing down pretty well, but they didn't like it. So always have another reader or a reader for you. You also just want to make sure that for every audition you do, your sound is conversational. You bring something interesting to the character. And here's something that a lot of people don't think about, but it's really crucial. Make sure that you create a life for this character prior to the scene starting. And I'm talking about for just a second, 2 seconds, maybe 3 seconds, maybe not quite that long. And you want to extend the scene by another second or two after it's done. So just to give you an example, let's say the beginning of the scene, you are running down the street and entering a room. You're entering a meeting, and maybe your first line is, "Hey, I'm really sorry I'm late." Well, if that's what's happening in this scene, you're not going to start off the scene with your first line, "Hey, really sorry I'm late, guys." You know, you just finished running. You're maybe a little out of breath. You ran up the steps. You feel a little embarrassed, and it's going to be, "Hey, look, I'm really sorry I'm late." So feel it and bring that life of that character to your opening line. At the very end, let's say the very last line, the person says to you, "Okay, like I'm sorry this didn't work out. Let's talk tomorrow." So what I would actually do is, so I'm talking to the person over here, not into the camera, and the person says, "I'll see you tomorrow," and I'm thinking things didn't go well today. I would actually follow the person out of the room. And then I'd come back. So I'd follow the person out of the room because they just left. I'm indicating the person's walking out. I'm taking a moment, thinking about what our conversation was just like. Then I'm looking back up, once again, not into the camera. So always create that life. Um, if you are asked to give a couple of reads, sometimes they do. Sometimes you are required. Sometimes it's optional, and that's going to be up to you. Make sure you don't read it the same way twice. And I know sometimes people do that. It makes you look like an actor who really doesn't have much skill, makes you look like someone who's not really thinking and preparing. So always give two different reads. Um, and the very last thing, you want to make sure that you also just edit out any parts of the beginning that people shouldn't see or at the very end. So let's say you have everything set up and you've got to reach over and you're hitting record, whatever it is, make sure that stuff is out. You also, once again, you can start the scene with that second or two prior to things actually beginning. If you're reading the newspaper before your first line, well, maybe you can look down for a second and then start the scene. But edit out any of the stuff that you don't want people to see. And by the way, just so you know, look, you don't have to be a great editor. These things can be really simple. I learned how to do this very quickly. Okay, so what kind of equipment do you actually need? You've got a couple choices. I used to use a camera, and that worked well. Then I found that when I actually purchased a Mac laptop, the camera is much better on my Mac. And that's what I'm recording this on. That's what I record all of my webinars on. So one thing that I've also been told by a number of casting directors, like if you're in a pinch and you have no other options, yeah, use a cell phone. Typically, they don't like cell phones being used. So anyhow, I would use either a camera, or if your laptop has really good built-in camera, that's what I would use. Now for sound, because once again, it's got to be really clean. It's got to be crisp. You have to be able to understand it, understand you really well. So I typically just use the built-in microphone on my laptop. For the webinars, I am using a high-end microphone, but it's not necessary. I find that my built-in mic works really well, and I can position my reader so that they get picked up very clearly also. So for sound, either a microphone that's built in, or you can also use a lavalier, and those are those ones that have a little clip, and then you plug into either the camera or possibly a laptop. And don't worry, you don't have to hide the lavalier. It's fine. People know it's an audition, so just you can use that, and you can purchase those. You can get inexpensive lavaliers for probably about $20. Just go online like at Amazon, and you'll find it. For lights, and once again, I'm going to show you the actual setup. But for lights, typically you're going to have three different lights. You're going to have one in the background that will help take out the shadows on the wall or on your screen. And then you're going to have two other lights that will help light your face. One thing that you can always do is go to a camera store and tell them exactly what you're doing. You're going to be using these lights for auditions, and ask them for recommendations for what kind of lights they would suggest. I also highly recommend that you use these special bulbs that don't create heat because you don't want to sit there and sweat during your audition. Um, the other thing that I have too, and you'll see it in another slide, I have little filters that or covers that go over the lights just to help smooth out my face. And you also will need 3 light stands, and or you can use clips, however your area is set up. And like I was saying, you want a clean background. I have a screen that I purchased and I attached to my wall, and I can just pull it down. But if it's a white wall, that works fine. Or you can even purchase portable screens. You can buy a green screen. There are blue screens or a white screen, and you can actually they're pretty cool. You can fold them up when you're not needing them, and just hang them up whenever you do need them. And then you need some editing equipment. And once again, it's really minimal investments. Now, if you're using a Mac, you've got iMovie, and it's built right in, and it's really simple. Um, I learn best by having somebody show me how to do things, and in 5 minutes, I had things set up. It worked really easily, and I can really simply clip off the very beginning, clip off the very end, or if I need to attach some things. Anyhow, the iMovie is really good. If you don't have a Mac and you're working with a PC, there are a couple of programs. One is called iSkysoft, and you'll see the link right down here. You can do basic editing, but also you can also convert your video, just like with Handbrake, which is the third link. Handbrake is free. It's really pretty cool. If you need to shrink the size of your video, you can do that with Handbrake. You can make things smaller. So if you need to upload it and it can only be a certain size, that's a great program. For the iSkysoft, there is a fee, and I'm trying to remember. It's somewhere around $40, and it's also a really helpful program. Okay, so this is my setup. It's really simple. It's basic. And look, depending on where you're doing this, if you're doing this in your living room, you might not want to leave the lights up, stationed. It doesn't make for a nice look in the living room. But I have mine in my home office. And so it's just stationary. It just stays there. I don't move it. And that way, every time I have to do an audition, it's great. I can just walk in, once I'm ready, I can start shooting. I don't have to move things around. I can tell you though, the very first time when you're starting to set this up, it will take some trial and error. And you might find you have to move one light, shift it over a couple of inches, raise it up a little bit, because you might get shadows. You might have some dark spots in there. So play with it, take some time. Excuse me. But once you have it set up, even if you do have to move it, if you have things set up, let's say on a table, something you can do is just put a little piece of tape down, and that way you'll know very specifically where to set things up when you have to, put the lights back in there. So as you can see here, here's the little filter that I was talking about. I have one light here. I've got one light here. I am sitting down here in a chair. I actually have to use a large textbook just to raise myself up a little bit. Here is my laptop that I use, and here's the screen. Something else that this came to me at like 3 o'clock one morning. I was trying to figure out, I used to use a table to place the laptop on, but it just got crowded. And then every time I wanted to use it, I had to move the table in and out. I was trying to make things simple. So here's what came to me early one morning. I have a file cabinet here. So what I do is I pull out one of the drawers, and I have some books underneath it, and I just lay the laptop right on top. And it's really simple. The very last thing, and you can see here, and this is with a clip, there's still the little filter on this light, and it helps keep all the shadows off of the screen. And it's a really simple setup. I don't remember, excuse me, the exact cost, but I'm thinking not the computer, but just the light stands, the bulbs, the filters, the screen. I'm trying to, it's like a couple $100. I don't remember exactly, but it's somewhere in that range. We're not talking about thousands of dollars here. So that's really the basic equipment that you need. And then if you do need a lavalier, mic, that's a nominal fee too. But that's the setup. So I had mentioned at the very beginning, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about slating. So there are a couple of different methods for slating, and there is no one right way or wrong way. I've heard people who've had real success who slate in character. They walk in there, and if they're the tough guy, they're going to slate, say their name, maybe their height, maybe their agency, the role they're reading for. They do it as the tough guy, and they want to immediately allow the casting director and the director know, I'm a tough guy. This is me. This is who you need to hire because that's exactly who I am. And like I said, I have heard people talk about it and said it's been very helpful to them. I get it. I don't use that method. The way that I like to slate is I'm going to slate in a very friendly, warm, I'm going to give you a little bit of a sense of who I am. It's almost as if I'm meeting somebody at a party. It's almost like, oh, hi, I'm Aaron Marcus. What's your name? Hi, I'm Aaron Marcus. Nice to meet you. That's the feeling that I like to have when I am slating. And when I do it that way, then after I do the slate, now I don't ask what your name is, but that I was just meant as if I'm at a party and I say, oh yeah, what's your name? Oh, hi, I'm Aaron Marcus. And then that's my response. Then what I will do is slightly look away from the camera, take a beat, then go into character. That's how I like to do it. The reason why I like to show that transition is I want to show them I can act. If you go in as character, they might think, yeah, that's who this person is. And if they need to make a change on the set, if they need you to do something different, maybe they're not 100% sure that you can because they think that you are that character. So that's why I like to make the transition warm, friendly, inviting, nice guy, somebody they want to work with, someone who's enjoyable to be with. Take a slight break, boom, then come back in. Once again, I'm not going to be in camera. It's going to be off to the side of the lens of the camera. That's how I like to do it. I also like to have one shoulder slightly closer to the camera whenever I'm slating. When you're straight in like this, it looks more like a yearbook photo well, yearbook photo. Good way of explaining it, or mugshot. So also when you do have one shoulder just slightly, I'm not talking about coming in like this, but just a little bit slightly closer to the camera, and I'll tilt my head a little. It just opens me up more, a little bit more friendly. And like I said, then you just take this, little break for a second, boom, then you come in and start the scene. And that way they're able to watch you make this transition. They can see that you have the ability to change characters. I think that's a really helpful way of doing it. So, strategies here. If possible, try to have the reader, like I said before, to camera left, your right. It depends on the situation. In my office, there is no room because I have a long desk there. So I'm not able to actually look at the reader when I'm doing the scene, which, I mean, I always prefer to be able to look at an actor when I'm reading with them, but that's just not how I can do it. And that's okay because I know where I want to take my character. I hear in my head how the reader should be responding to me, and that's how I react to it. So if you can, have them there. If not, then they can be off to the side a little bit. If you are reading to more than one person in a scene, so let's say you're talking to three people, make sure you indicate that. So if the reader's here and I'm talking to one person here, and now there's another person I'm talking to, I'm going to shift over to over here. And then I might have to shift over here. So always indicate those other people. Now, don't make the mistake and go profile and have one person here, and one person, that's not good. It's going to be subtle because you assume that people are going to be fairly close to each other anyway. And even if one person is further away, still, you don't want to do a profile. You can have the other person over there. But make sure you go to each person, and when you're addressing different people, go back to the correct person. Um, let's see. So we talked about having the where the reader is positioned. Oh, and this is great. Let's say you live by yourself, and you don't have, and if you have a dog and the dog's not really good at acting, and you need another reader, or let's say even if you do live with other people, but this is a last second kind of audition, there's nobody else available. What do you do? What I suggest, something I do, I do this all the time, is I have someone that I FaceTime with. And so what I will do is email the sides to the person, and then I will set up my phone right to as if the reader was there, and I'll have them, just to my right, camera left. I actually can see them with FaceTime, and they're reading opposite lines. And just do a test first, just to make sure that their volume is not too loud or too soft, because they're going to be, pretty close, really close to the camera. Or if you need to, if that's an issue, just move the cell phone further away. You can't see them, but at least the sound will be a little bit more normal. But that's a great thing to do if you just don't have anybody to read with you. Now, look, it's always best if you can have an actor read with you. Certainly, you need to talk to the actor about your strategies, about what you're looking for, what your intentions are. But even if the person's not an actor, that works too. Just make sure that they can get through the dialogue. They don't have to act it out. If they can't act, don't try to get them to act, because that's going to stand out. And then people are going to start listening to the reader and kind of cringe, and then they've lost you. So just say, they can say it very flat. And in some ways that makes it easier, because once again, I hear in my head how the real actor would be reading with me, and I respond to that. So anyhow, cell phones are great. Now you've finished shooting everything, and this is going to be a large file. Even if it's only, 30 seconds or a minute, it's going to be way, 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 way too big to upload it as an attachment in an email. So, depending on how you were asked to upload it, if it's a website that you're uploading it to, and then that makes it easier. Sometimes you are sending it out, directly to the casting director, or it might be directly to an agent. However you're doing it, here are 3 different files or programs that you can use when you are uploading really large files. And it's Mail Big File, WeTransfer, and then Transfer Big Files. They're all free. Just full disclosure, I mean, actually, I make a donation to Mail Big File. I use it a lot. I also use WeTransfer a lot. And so, and they do ask for donations. So since I do use it a lot, I do make a small donation, but you don't have to. They do have free programs that you can use, and it's really, they're really good. Okay, so need to-do list, just kind of wrapping things up here. So number 1, get all the details of shoot dates, of when you need to have this uploaded by, all the other information, what they need in the slate, all of that stuff. Study the sides, make sure you're really familiar with it. Certainly, if you can memorize it, that's always best. A lot of times, though, these things come in so quickly, and you've got to get them out really quickly. It's hard, at least for me. Sometimes it's hard to fully memorize it. So I will always at least have the sides next to me, and while I'm doing it, I will read it off book as much as I can. But then if I need to, I just kind of glance over, grab a word, or 2, and then come back. It's as long as you can do it in a natural way, that's fine. I mean, certainly you don't want to just sit there and just read, off the sheet of paper. But when you're talking with people, you look at them, you look away, you come back to them, just like during the audition, you can look away and then you come back and and grab it. Have all of your equipment in place so you're ready to shoot. Um, After you've done the shoot, make sure that you have edited things properly. And after that, upload it, and send it out. And when you're done, you should celebrate a little bit. Look, you haven't booked the job, but the fact is, you were asked to audition. And that is a tremendous accomplishment. It's hard just getting the audition. There are hundreds, sometimes thousands of people who are submitted for roles. And I can tell you, I've taken some workshops with casting directors, and they will tell me that depending on the role, depending on the kind of project, they can see anywhere from 500, 1,500 or more headshots, and they will narrow that down. And once again, this is not an exact number, but I would say most of the casting directors that I've spoken with have said typically they'll see about 30 people. So if you got the audition, that is tremendous. Congratulations. So anyhow, that's what I wanted to share with you. Take your time with this. I can tell you that shooting home auditions is pretty common in certain markets. Make sure you've got the equipment, make sure you're comfortable with it, make sure you're really good at it. And it can save you a tremendous amount of time and money. Look, sometimes you can get booked directly from the home audition. I find that most of the time I still have to travel to wherever the audition is. If there's a callback, they want to see you in person. It varies, but the point is this at least cuts out that initial drive. And look, I always prefer reading live for a casting director only because they can give me more information than I have. They know more about what's going on, what the director wants, and things like that. But it is great to be able to do these auditions from home. And you mess up the first one or the second one or the third one, you can redo it. And it's a great way to sharpen your skills as well. So just want to quickly let you know, next month, of course, there'll be another great online webinar. If you do have any follow-up questions, you can always reach me through my website, howtoactandmodel.com, or on my Facebook page, facebook.com/howtomodel. And as you might know, I also set aside 5 days every month, and I work with people online privately. I have a great mentoring program. And just go to howtoactandmodel.com, click on mentoring, and you can see the different programs that I offer. But it's just a great way for you to save yourself years and years of guesswork, trial and error, save yourself a lot of money from not doing things that are unnecessary, spending money in areas that are unnecessary. And I will actually set up our session specifically dependent on your needs. And so, and we work one-on-one. So it's really cool. Just go to howtoactandmodel.com, click on the mentoring program. And yeah, like I said, I only set aside 5 days each month. So check it out. I'm Aaron Marcus. Can't wait to talk with you again real soon. See ya.